Good, cool. All right, so this slide deck is a template slide deck that you can use to input the information that you might share with the judges during the final presentation on Sunday. So over here on the left, there are 10 slides, all right, including the title slide. So title, problem, opportunity, value, the underlying magic, what are you bringing to the table? Business model, how do you make money? How are you going to come to that market? Your competitive analysis, whatever you've pulled together, who you guys are, you as a team, some financial metric if you're talking money, or if you have some KPIs you want to highlight, and then tell us about how things are going to unfold, all inclusive. So the problem opportunity, so all of the topics I just went through that are on these slides, they need to more or less be included so that the judges have that information. What I want to be clear about is the process in which you unfold that information needs to be logical. It needs to be telling the story that you and your team have come up with, that narrative you've created. So I'm going to walk you through them in this sequence. The sequence in which you unfold them, in which you tell the story, needs to be the logical way it makes sense for the thing you're creating. If the new thing you're creating is a new payment method or a new business model around an existing value proposition, then that might be the thing you lead with. If the problem opportunity is a new way you've defined the market, and thus that becomes a bit of the value proposition because you've defined it in a way no one else has, that might be the thing you lead with. I'm going to go in this sequence, but your sequence needs to be the logical narrative you're telling with your team and what you've been working on this weekend. I just want to make that clear before we start anything here. So the problem and the opportunity, when you're breaking down the things that you have defined, like the circles I showed you Friday and yesterday, we need to understand when you're done speaking, not just the filled in part of the circle, but the lines. So you need to explain to us so that we could redraw the line around the problem opportunity, enough so that we understand who it is, where they are, where their problems lie, where they have their money, where they maybe spend their money, because you've explained to us how it is they go about this activity, this behavior they do, this problem they have. You've explained it well enough where we understand it and can explain it ourselves. We could draw that circle and fill it in with all the words and statistics you've given to us. So the problem opportunity is really about the problem. The shoehorn exists, folks. Some people don't want to ruin their shoes, so they get a little metal slidey piece to put their shoe on. Right? You better make it clear that these shoes are important, and I want to keep my shoes nice, so I'm going to buy a little piece to help me put my shoes on. It's amazing the shoehorn exists. So if I have trouble putting on my shoes because I ruin the heel of my shoe all the time, my problem, my value proposition is having nice shoes, keeping nice shoes. Yeah, I'm alleviating that problem. The value prop I'm bringing is you can keep your shoes nice, or instead of getting a new pair of shoes in 2 years, you can get a new pair of shoes in 4 years, because with the shoehorn, the heel of your shoe doesn't wear out. How are you alleviating that problem you just talked about? Your value is bringing about that problem not being a problem anymore. You're bringing value in that area. So how are you explaining that to us? Are you telling us a story about a persona you made up? Are you performing a skit in a video style? Are you walking through a financial projection that used to be an issue, but now you're creating value from those finances? again, you need to have explained to us so that we could explain back to you, this is your value prop. This is where the edges are. This is how I'd fill it in. So those two are pretty well linked. The underlying magic then is how you're going about doing that. So you could tell a story on the problem, the value prop. You have to unpack that story a little bit for us then of saying, all right, here's how we're going to do that. Here's how the current market isn't thinking about the thing we just told you about. Here's how we're innovating in that space. So what's that underlying magic that you and your team have brought to the market or brought to that segment? And you're just unpacking that thing you just said. Tell us how this thing's going to work. Business model is pretty straightforward, right? The business model is how you get paid. Here, some of the shortfalls, people will put a graph. They'll make a spreadsheet and then they'll make a bar graph that goes up and to the right, or they'll make some comparisons to bad bar graphs and then what theirs is going to look like. You can use big numbers here. Business model, you could have the number 53 and it says per month, or 100,000 people, and the word people is really small, per month. In a business model, you're explaining how you make money. And so again, you're relating this business model, this slide 5, back to the thing you're doing and the way you're delivering it. And here you're just telling us about the money side of it. So don't overcomplicate the fact that I give you money once a month. We all know how that works. Don't overcomplicate that I'm going to give you money every time I use your service. Maybe you say we're going to do in the first year these things or that sort of thing, but that's more projection at the end. Here you're simply stating if I want 1, or if I want 5, or if you have a suite, how do I financially receive that value you're bringing? So again, you can complicate this or you can make it super simple. I suggest you make it simple. If there's a question or a call out, please don't hesitate to stop me here. Where is that file? How are the pockets? Great. All right, so business model is the money. Explain to us the money. My favorite are big numbers. Since you've already told us the narrative, now you're just referencing those things you've clearly explained and how you pay for them. So then the go-to-market is how to make all that become a reality, right? It doesn't exist yet. So remember, these things don't exist yet, and that's the point. And that's what you need to spend your time explaining. Don't waste your 5 minutes re-explaining how the current market already works. Reference it, say, we're going to leverage that, we're going to use it in that way. Reference existing models so that we understand the context, and then spend the rest of your time explaining the new thing you've come up with, you and your team have innovated on. So if your go-to-market plan outlines the current market and how it operates and the behaviors people have, then your go-to-market plan needs to explain how those behaviors will be different, or how you're going to interject yourself in those behaviors, or where you're going to situate your product so that when they just do what they're already doing, they run into it. That's got to be your go-to-market. We need to understand how your great website that will do all the things they want to do, how will anyone ever get there? Why will people know that URL? What are you and your team doing so that the potential customer will have clicked on that URL or typed that URL in? Doesn't matter what the website does if no one ever goes to that URL. So you have to explain how you're going to do some guerrilla marketing, or you're going to work with existing insurance companies, and part of your sales process is working with them, and so their customers will have your product. Or admissions departments are going to have this product, and so your sales process is selling it to them, and then they will leverage your product for their students. How are you going to get your clients to address their customers? You're explaining that to us. The competitive analysis needs to look a few ways. It needs to look like we know, and you know, and so we know because you've explained it to us, what the current market looks like. Then also what the, not just the names of the organizations, but how you compare to them. So sometimes that comparison is a straight chart. We've all seen the left-hand column of company names and all the variables of the product across the top. Everyone else has red check marks on them, and your company has red X's on them, and your company has green check marks. We do everything and they do nothing. Use our service. So the competitive analysis could be a straight chart. You're doing a straight comparison. It can also look like industry research. If there's industry research, like Bureau of Labor Statistics, if it's an economic development corporation who's put out a white paper, if it's a startup report from the Kauffman Foundation, if there's industry research around what you're saying, then use that and leverage those numbers, right? The outputs that they've said and they've concluded. Leverage those outputs in your competitive analysis, saying the industry needs this. And just last year, they said there's 100,000 people every year who don't get this service that we're offering. That's a competitive analysis too. That's someone's already done the work. They've outlined what it is that people need. They've gone and found out, and they've said, here, there's still a huge need in the market. Leverage those sorts of things. The competitive analysis, I don't remember too many. Multi-sided markets can get complicated. I don't know. I think there's two ideas that might have that here. The miners, Kentucky miners, I think you might, but you don't feel so. So you might not focus on that. But including different markets, if there's a specific one, those can get hairy with multi-sided markets because you're now doing competitive of different sides of different markets and then trying to pull them together. So those can get hairy. I will say leveraging the narrative of your value prop can really help here. Draw a line through an otherwise complex market. I'll say that again, in the competitive analysis, oftentimes it's beneficial to bring back and revisit your narrative of your value proposition to help you explain and draw a line through an otherwise complex market. So you can bring those back up.
And
management
Frank,
team here.
On the multi-sided market for any B2B companies here. I know that when we were talking about customer discovery and all of that, Zach recommended talking to whichever of those is the hardest side to reach, because, you know, in consumer, you can probably get them easy, but provider might be hard, whatever that is. For discussing the value prop here, should the team still focus on the harder to reach side or on the benefit to both sides, or what?
Definitely focus on the harder to reach side and explain that more. The judges will choose that one to poke a hole in. If you have a multi-sided market, they'll choose the harder one to get, or they'll ask you, how are you going to go about getting either of them, and explaining the harder one first, then you'll beget the second one, or the easier one, so to speak. So if you have that and you have one that's clearly harder, explaining what both are, but then diving into the harder one to explain how you're going to get to that one, would be how I would frame it. Does that answer your question?
Thank you very much.
Yeah. The management team, we need to know a little bit about you. We need to know who you are, names here, and some experiences. Those experiences need to relate to the thing. So don't share with us your entire LinkedIn profile here. If you've worked at a company in a role that helps on the idea you're working on, then that's what we need to have on this slide. So you were at eBay and you were the marketing director of the Americas. You're hopefully a part of the go-to-market strategy of getting the marketing into your market. So you have a whole bunch of other things and roles and companies you've been at, but don't just put eBay and don't just put eBay marketing, put eBay director of marketing of the Americas, showing that, hey, I have experienced marketing to the Americas and how to reach those people. And that's that market I just told you about we're getting. Oh, okay, cool. There's a connection between what you're doing and your experiences. Not because you don't have other experiences, just because this is the presentation you're giving. So whatever it is you highlight about your teammates, make it relevant to the presentation you're giving. So the skill set and building out the needs for the go-to-market. If you had some advisors yesterday that you got in contact with, you were lucky enough to reach someone who would respond and talk with you. I know we had some healthcare providers. I think Devin was trying to talk to some. I see Allison getting excited. Some people that you needed to hear from, some stakeholders. You're welcome and invited to put them here and say, they're working with us. We're working with them to move forward with the project. They're going to be an advisor to us. Again, whatever you write below their picture needs to be relevant to what it is you're working on and what your team is building. So the second to last slide are the financial projections and key metrics. These sorts of things are the money or the people. You're explaining to us how that adoption rate looks. Your go-to-market, how does that unfold? You're basically unpacking your go-to-market. If that looks like the next few months, if that looks like the next couple of years, if that looks like the first 10,000 users, if that looks like the first 10,000, then 50,000, then 100,000, whatever those metrics are that make sense for what it is you're going to market with, that's what we should understand and walk away with. There's not one right answer. There's the answer that fits your narrative. So if you're trying to get more people online, if you're trying to get more students connected, if you're trying to get 50 Bitcoin mined, tell us how you're going to get there. Unpack that projection and what's going to take to get to those landmarks. We should hear about the landmarks and we should understand how you're going to reach them. So for this one here, we should understand the landmarks and we should understand how you're going to reach them. Sometimes that looks like people or downloads. Sometimes it looks like money or investment. Whatever those are, make sure that we understand it when you're done explaining your key metrics. Any questions there? I guess I'll pause, see if there's some details. Yes, on Miro is where I got the deck. On your table right here, it says final presentation deck. All right, the last slide is really an update on, okay, we've explained all the things to you nicely. Here's where we're at and here's what we need to work on. So what it is that we're going to be moving towards, what we're going to be doing. So now that you understand what it is we're doing, who we're doing it for, how they're going to give us money, who we are, how we're actually the magic of that all happening. What are we moving into? we're going to be using these funds, investors, or we're going to be building this app, or we're going to be calling on these potential customers. Give us the runway. And for those of you, I know I gave kind of this talk probably 3 times yesterday, that whole idea of explain one part or one sector segment of your market really well. This slide, slide 10, is that ending where you take that knowledge and you apply it to this segment and that segment and that segment. We're going to focus in on students. And then on slide 10, you say, now that you understand how we're going to apply this to students, we can actually take all of that and apply it to retirees and middle class and poverty stricken. And then you're letting the judge extrapolate all that things you explained clearly onto those new markets and new areas. You explained it clearly, and so you can just apply it to those other areas. That's what you can do here. So again, this one is 10 slides. Whatever you put on these slides, please make it not a book. Please make it pictures with captions. Think it for your presentation today, these slides, think pictures and captions. Your words need to be supported by what we're seeing. What you're saying out of your mouth, your words need to be supported by what we are seeing with our eyes on this presentation. If our eyes are forcing our brain to read your presentation, our ears are not listening to the words you're saying. Please do not write out your presentation on slides. Please have the slides in pictures with captions, or pictures with a big number, or a picture and an icon, or a picture with an arrow. Have what we're seeing highlight for us what you're trying to explain to us. The problem, someone falling or not being able to put their shoe on because they're smooshing the back of their shoe. Show us what you're trying to explain to us. That's what the slides are for. Tell us a story and show us in pictures what you're saying. Other than that, it's that's now it just gets very on you. Where does your team go? What is it you've built? It gets very specific. So we'll stay on till 9:30 to chat more about this and dig into it with some of you, if you'd like. Otherwise, the day is yours. Let